You have probably heard throughout your life that you need to believe in yourself. Your parents have told you, your teacher has told you, your coach has told you, and you probably know that this is not just good but great advice. We all need to believe in whatever we're trying to accomplish, and we can't do that if we don't first believe in ourselves. Ever heard the saying, mind over matter? It was first used back in 1863 and refers to a situation in which someone is able to control a physical condition or problem by using the mind. There have been many cases where a person, through sheer will, has affected their physical condition. The doctor says you'll never walk again, but in spite of a lack of available medical treatment, you do. A woman's car crashes, trapping her child under it. With a will to save her child, she lifts the car and pulls her child to safety. A man at death's door wants nothing more than to walk his only daughter down the aisle. The day after the wedding, he finally succumbs to his illness and dies peacefully in his bed. Mind over matter. But let's face it, this only works if you first believe in yourself. Nothing is truer than when writing a novel. If you don't believe in what you're doing, it's unlikely you will be able to navigate through all the obstacles associated with taking on such an endeavor. Time for another of my little tales. Once upon a time, there was a very old man named Agnar who knew that he didn't have much time left in the world. In fact, he was at death's door. Actually, death was at his door. He continually showed up every evening in hopes of finally be able to take the old man away with him. Now, the old man had three sons who he would be leaving behind when he finally died. Two of his sons, named Sigurd and Alvar, he loved dearly and wanted to give them everything he could. But the other son, named Jarl, he despised. He hated that son with such a passion that he was often heard wishing that he would live long enough to see his death. You see, Agnar was once very much in love with his beautiful wife, Aldis. She had given him his three sons, but during the birth of Jarl, there were complications which resulted in her death. From that day until this day, Agnar blamed his youngest son for the death of his beloved. But although Jarl was hated by his father, he was the smartest of the three sons. In fact, he was so quick to understand the workings of most things that after his father became too ill to properly run the farm, the control of it was put in his hands. Agnar very much wanted to hand it over to one or both of his other sons, but they just didn't have the knack for running such a complex farm and nearly caused the loss of it. Then one evening, while Agnar was resting on his front porch, Death appeared, hoping to finally collect. But Agnar still had strength enough to live for a while longer. Part of that was because he loved hating his youngest son and continued to pray for the day that he could see the death of him. This continued for a few months longer until Agnar had become so ill that it was just a matter of days before he would finally succumb and death would be able to take him away. But Death had grown accustomed to their regular evening visits and decided to do something he had never done before. He told Agnar that he would allow him to offer his three sons one wish each, and if they could find a way to wish for something to keep him alive, he would stop trying to take him away. So the next morning, Agnar called his three sons to his bed and told them to make a wish that would keep him alive. The first son, Sigurd, said, I wish for my father to live long enough to see me wed. Now, he believed he was actually helping his father to live to an even riper age because he hadn't any plans to ever marry. But surprisingly, less than a month later, he met the girl of his dreams and they were wed a short time after. Then Alvar The second son wished for his father to live long enough to see his firstborn. And since he didn't have a steady girlfriend, he figured it would be many years before he got married and had a child. But the next day, there was a knock at the door, and a young woman stood in the doorway holding a young child. This is the result of our last encounter in my father's barn, said the young woman. Then Agner turned to his last son with fear in his eyes, braced himself to hear the wish that he believed would surely not be in his favor. So, with a smile and without hesitation, Jarl made his wish. After hearing the wish, Death realized he had been beaten at his own game. Today, I'll talk about the need to believe in yourself. Then I'll tell you why Death had to leave. When writing, you as the writer need to remind yourself that generally this isn't a team sport. Therefore, unlike the profession of working on an assembly line, you are alone at your task. You have only yourself, usually until the time arrives when you have completed creating your story. You are your only support system, and believe it or not, if you are struggling with the concept of believing in yourself, then it's unlikely you will push yourself toward the end of your novel. Don't get confused with believing in your task at hand versus believing in yourself. In life, there are many things that we don't believe in, but that doesn't need to prevent us from believing in ourselves. You might be a lawyer that doesn't believe in his client, but if you believe in yourself, you can still be a brilliant lawyer. In an earlier video, I mentioned that characters that you create are extensions of yourself. Well, your story is an elaboration of your imagination, always seeking out new and exciting ideas to be turned into stories. This is something that your mind does over and over again during the creation of your story. But without the ability to believe in yourself, two things will happen. First, you find yourself second guessing everything you attempt to write, and then you begin to lose interest. You lose that drive to persevere, that all important quality that's all writers must have when endeavoring to write a novel. Time for another one of my little example stories. For this one, I'd like to compare a writer to a boxer. I know it seems an odd comparison, but the way I see it, like a writer, boxing isn't a team sport either. A boxer is finally able to do what he has been training his entire career for, to fight for the heavyweight championship of the world. At the same time, a writer is finally ready to sit down at her computer and begin writing the great novel she's been contemplating for the past several years. As the boxer steps into the ring, he looks across at his opponent and realizes that this is the day he's been waiting for. This is what his life in boxing has been preparing for. He steps up to the center of the ring and stands face to face with the one person who has what he has coveted for as long as he can remember: the title he intends on taking home. He listens vaguely to what the referee is saying. He is distracted by his focus on the man who stands across from him. When the referee stops speaking, he raises his gloves and taps them against those of his opponents before stepping back into his corner. The writer sits down at her computer and, after turning it on, stares at the blank screen. To one side of it is her notepad filled with pages of notes that she has accumulated over the years. On the wall ahead of her is a chart she prepared based on her initial idea. That idea has evolved into the plot she is now ready to turn into a story. In the room that she is seated in, the window is closed and the blinds are drawn. The door she uses to enter the room is also closed and locked. Her favorite classical music is playing, but only loud enough to drown out any noises outside of the room. As the sound of the bell rings out, the boxer and his opponent move to the center of the ring. The boxer, with his gloves up, eyes his opponent, studying him, waiting for the moment to strike. It comes quickly, and after blocking a jab from his opponent, he quickly counteracts by releasing a jab of his own, followed by another, and then a rounded punch to the side of his opponent's head. He lets go two more quick jabs, but just before he is able to deliver another rounded punch, his opponent steps in and lands an uppercut, which knocks him back and to the mat. Sitting there, listening to the referee count down from 10, he knows he isn't hurt, but he hesitates to get to his feet. He's been taken by surprise. Overconfidence allowed him to drop his guard, and in doing so, gave his opponent the upper hand. Staring up at him, he suddenly realizes his fear. It's not the battle with the other fighter he must win. It's the battle within himself that he must first conquer. The sound of the keys of the writer's computer being struck as she guides her characters through the plot of her story ring out above the sound of the music. Her protagonist has just confronted her antagonist, and the conflict that ensues between them pushes the story along at a faster pace than she expected. Each time her protagonist begins to achieve the upper hand, her antagonist does the unexpected and drives her protagonist back. The writer knows that her protagonist must outwit her antagonist, but she doesn't know how to accomplish this while staying true to her story. The conflict between them continues to grow as the writer tries introducing secondary characters to try to give her protagonist that needed edge. However, the antagonist remains unaffected. This story isn't going in the direction in which the writer had envisioned. Taking her hands off the keyboard, she sits back in her chair and stares at the screen. She picks up her notebook and flips through her notes. Years of planning seem to be of little consequence as she tries to think of a way for her protagonist to overcome his adversary without diminishing the integrity of the story. It is then that she realizes the answer isn't contained within the pages of her notebook or on the chart on the wall, but within herself. Staring up at his opponent, who confidently stares back at him with all the self assurance needed to win this fight, he vaguely hears the referee continue his countdown. With the crowd on their feet, cheering and booing, he has never felt more alone. He has made the biggest mistake a boxer can make while in the ring. He stopped believing in himself. And because of that fatal flaw, became unsure as to whether he could win. He knew he was the better fighter. His record proved that. This fight was to be merely a formality. Yet when he realized he had been knocked off his feet in the first round by a punch he hadn't prepared for, a wave of doubt washed over him, taking with it his confidence and will to go on. The writer needs a reason to give her protagonist the upper hand. It's while pondering this dilemma that she realizes she is the problem. Her protagonist is merely an extension of herself, and with all of her notes, charts, and preparation over the years, she didn't stop to ask herself whether or not she actually believed in her protagonist, whether or not she actually believed he was capable. Once she realized she didn't have the necessary confidence in her abilities, she stopped believing in her protagonist, allowing the conflict to lean in favor of her antagonist. Just like the boxer who continued to stare up at his opponent from the mat, the writer needed a reason to believe in her character. Impossible without first being able to believe in herself. The boxer had lost his chance at the title not because he was knocked to the ground, but because he lacked the necessary confidence in himself to get back up. Apart from the fact that both the writer and the boxer were alone in their quest, their inability to believe in themselves prevented them from attaining their objective. All of their preparedness, commitment, and determination meant nothing without the confidence to believe they could achieve it. Two very different vocations, but still tethered to a similar reality. If you cannot find a way to believe in yourself, then how can you possibly expect success? And now, I'll tell you the ending of the story I call My Father's Only Wish. Jarl knew of the hatred that his father had for him, but it was equal to the love he had for his father. And since he wanted nothing more than to make his father happy, he decided to make his wish the very wish his father had been asking for since the day of his birth. Jarl then turned to Death and said in a proud voice, I wish my father to live long enough to see my death. Knowing that Jarl was not scheduled to die for many years to come, Death took a long look at the young son and then stormed out of the house. Thanks for watching, and if you found anything that I said beneficial to you in any way, hit that subscribe button because you never know. My next video might just be helpful too.